11. On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus was going through the region between Samaria and Galilee. As he entered a village, 10 lepers approached him. Keeping their distance, they called out, saying, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." When Jesus saw them, he said to them, "Go and show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were made clean. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice. He prostrated himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. And Jesus asked, "Were not 10 made clean, but the other 9, where are they? Was none of them found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner?" And Jesus said to him, "Get up and go on your way. Your faith has made you well." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. You know, if we did this more often than every couple of years, Presbyterians might actually start dancing, and that would be very scary for me. So will you pray with me? Holy God, we give you thanks for great tunes, great songs, great words that lift our spirits. So speak to us as we ponder your word, that we might grow afresh, anew, in what it means to belong to Christ. We pray in his name. Amen. 1977 was my first year living in the northeast of the nation. I arrived at Princeton Seminary in Princeton, New Jersey. I needed a few things for my dorm room, so I drove to the Kmart out on Route 1, a couple miles outside of Princeton. I picked up the items, went to the checkout, paid for them, and took the bag from the cashier, and I said, "Thank you very much." She looked at me like I had 3 heads. "Thank you for what?" I don't, for ringing them up, for doing your job, for having the merchandise I wanted today. I don't, just thanks. It was clear in her mind or experienced, or what I was beginning to discover was the very rushed culture of a Kmart on Route 1 in New Jersey. No thank you was required. You get your stuff, you stand patiently in line, or kind of patiently. You pay and you move on. They get their money, you get what you need, and that's it. Everybody's fine. You should have seen the looks when I thanked the toll booth operators on the New Jersey Turnpike. They really thought I had lost my brain. So the text today is about gratitude. Jesus asked, we're not 10 cleansed? You know, where are the other 9? Now, we need to be clear here that the 9 who are all Jews, because Jesus only highlights the one as a foreigner. He's there, Galilee, Samaria, between. They're 9 Jews. They did absolutely nothing wrong. In fact, they do exactly what Jesus tells them to do. He instructs them to go to the priest even before they are healed, and they do that. They do exactly as he commands, and on the way there, they are healed. They're not punished for not coming back. Jesus doesn't strike them down or give them a double dose of leprosy for not saying please and thank you. They're not soundly condemned or called whitewashed sepulchres, as he says to the Pharisees. He just simply asks, where are they? Of course, the reality is it's a rhetorical question. It's a teaching moment for his followers as he sets up this contrast between the 9 and the 1. The one who returned the Samaritan, something different has happened with him. So Jesus wants his followers to think about that, to ponder that, to question, why is that? And the first answer, really the bottom line answer for me, is because he's different in the first place. I mean, true, he's a leper like the others. On that count, they are all in the same boat. And as the saying goes, misery loves company. Or Shakespeare said, brings strange bedfellows. But he's not just a leper. He's also a Samaritan. And in that region near Galilee, he would have been an outcast, despised by the Jews. If not for the common bond of this disease, the 9 Jews would not have been caught dead with him, much less alive. This one is a double loser. And I wonder if the Samaritan had any reason to believe he would even be helped by this itinerant rabbi. Imagine him standing at the edge of the group on the fringe, maybe in the background as they cry out to the rabbi for mercy. He knows he has no claim upon this Jewish wonder worker. So when he's made whole, he's very aware of the gift and grateful for it. I thought about it, and I thought, and for that gratitude, he's got an advantage. if you can call it that. An advantage the other 9 don't have. You see from the bottom of the ladder, every rung is up. For the low man on the totem pole, every move is a promotion. For the woman on minimum wage, any raise is a cause for celebration. From the point of appreciating grace from a Jewish rabbi, the Samaritan leper has a big advantage, a leg up on the 9. I think Jesus is doing here what he does over and over, highlighting his own tradition in which many had come to assume that God owed them, that God would bless them and take care of them simply because they were children of Abraham. Perhaps the 9 weren't any more thankful because they weren't all that surprised. I mean, they hadn't expected disease. They assumed they would have health, don't we all? Once ill, if they didn't necessarily expect healing, at least they hoped for it. Perhaps they assumed they deserved health. It's a classic problem of human nature, and it's not confined to first century Jews, because it's a condition we're all afflicted with. Not that you and I can't appreciate it. It's just that somewhere along the line we get lulled into our thinking, or, well, each generation comes along and, it seems, we grow to expect so much more and forget how much we've been given. Nobody set out to train us to be ungrateful. I grew up, please and thank you. Don, please, thank you. We just fall into assuming we deserve what we have. My father bought his first new car 10 years after he got married. 10 years! I mean, my generation expected, you got your first new car right after college, or your first job, that's when you got, my kids' generation, they don't get one by the end of high school, they're disappointed. It's human nature. We forget what we've been given, and how outraged we can get when things don't go our way, when we get diseases, when we lose our jobs, when we have to wait a little longer in the line at the airport. We forget that unlike so much of the rest of humanity where we live, we've come to assume we're owed all these blessings, all of these blessings, and more. I mean, it sounds strange, but the Samaritan leper had, if you will, an unfair advantage. When a double loser is accepted and loved, they have twice the potential for spontaneous fall on the floor gratitude, which is exactly what he does. He comes running back and he falls down at Jesus' feet. He worships God and gives thanks for what has happened to him. Fred Craddock, a great pastor, professor, preacher, says about this passage, here in this passage is the truth that hurts. It's so often the outsider who appreciates and responds with gratitude to the countless gifts we take for granted. The visitor in my home talks with and enjoys the children I hardly noticed between the time I got home from work and watched the evening news. The visitor thanks my spouse for the meal I've eaten 1,000 times in silence. It is the stranger, the outsider, who notices and expresses appreciation for what familiarity and expectation have blinded us to. There's an old Joni Mitchell song, Big Yellow Taxi, with a great line in it. Don't it always seem to go? You don't know what you got till it's gone. They paved paradise and put up a parking lot. This is the truth that hurts. But it's also a truth that can heal. Because I don't think Jesus is lifting this up so that the Samaritan is someone who shows us up to be ingrates. He's used by Jesus in this story to open our eyes and our ears and our hearts. And that if we are a little bit ungrateful, we don't need to be beat up. We just need to be reminded and rekindled, our thoughts opened again. We need reminded of the abundance we have received. I remember decades ago, people were stunned. Stunned when first-generation immigrant youth, some of them refugees from Southeast Asia, China, Vietnam, Laos, India, were being found at the top of the honor rolls in high schools and colleges around this country. How did they do that? It was easy. They had not yet had the opportunity to forget that education is a privilege their parents never had, and was not something to be squandered. Singing the old gospel hymns reminds some of us, not all of us I know, but some of us, of the powerful, raw, often emotional experience of faith that drew us first, or over and over again, into the loving, forgiving arms of God. Sunday school classes for me, singing with Art Every and Louis Mizell, two elders in the church who were committed to teaching Sunday school children these great hymns. Church camps and retreats, evangelistic meetings, Billy Graham crusades, Young Life or Campus Crusade or InterVarsity Fellowship in college. A former colleague used to tease me. He was nice about it, but he teased me nonetheless about how emotional I tend to get when I ask a group of new members or confirmands, do you trust in Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior? And I get emotional because every time I ask it, I'm reminded of the time in high school when I answered that question for myself, and my whole world changed. Remembering afresh God's amazing grace, God's embrace of me, a sinner. The Gospel of Luke is often called the Gospel to the Gentiles because in it we find, more than any of the other Gospels, these stories about outsiders. And we see how cognizant the outsiders are of the privilege of being invited in. That's why typically new converts to the faith are often the most exuberant ones. How many times have I seen church-going parents really wrestle when their kid gets religion? Oh dear. But new converts have not yet had a chance to grow accustomed to the gift. They don't take God's grace for granted. The good news in this text is it never indicates you and I are going to get blasted for not saying thank you. It just declares until we realize or remember anew each day the wonder and joy of what we have, are stirred to gratitude and to worship, we've forgotten how to really live. Our hearts may still be beating, we're living and breathing, maybe have a decent job, nice house, a fine car, but we aren't really living. This text reminds us gratefulness is about coming alive. That's what happened over and over and over again to those who were touched by Jesus, especially the outsiders. It can happen to a leper from Samaria. It can happen again to you and to me each and every day as we hear this good news of God's love in Jesus Christ. He lives, He lives, He he lives within my heart. Thanks be to God. Amen.